I've updated the link in the invite. You found it. All right.
That was my secondary instinct when the first link didn't work. I'm like, let me go check my email.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Sorry about that. Gonna keep emailing until everybody gets here. The updated Zoom link. Hi, Lisa. Oh, good. You made it. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna, it's 9:31. We want to be mindful of everybody's time because I know Mercedes and Janice, they have class, and so we want to get them moving along as quickly as possible, David. So I will share the agenda and you can start if that's okay.
yep, sounds good.
Okay, great. June, can you please turn the sharing on so that I can share my document? You should be able to share.
And just to confirm, we're waiting for you to bring up the agenda, Tina, or you're waiting on me to start
Yes,
the meeting?
so I put the agenda in the link. I think I should be able to share it now. So you can begin while I do that, David. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to call to order the Weston Board of Education Curriculum Subcommittee. It is 9:33 a.m. on January 8th, and we have a forum. The first order of business is approval of our December 2024 meeting minutes. So Lisa, it is you and I. So unless you have any questions, but you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my computer going because it would I joined late. Yes, it's you and I. So let's go.
Okay. Did you have a chance to review the meeting minutes from our December meeting?
I did not. I was looking at the curriculum, but I assume they were all right.
Okay. All right. So then I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I approve.
All right. And I second that. So we're good. next item. So let's see here. So I think I can see your screen now, Tina. Nope, I see your email.
Oh, great. Now do you see it?
Yes,
Do you see the agenda now?
yes. Yep.
Okay, I wasn't, usually in Zoom, there's like a red box around the screen that is being shared. Because today we switched to Zoom versus using Google Meet. So I apologize.
Yeah, just for, as we sometimes say, our viewing audience, we little technical difficulties only because we were adjusting to the change from Google to Zoom, even though we all familiar with Zoom, it's just like muscle memory. We all know how to operate in Google, and now we're operating in Zoom, and it's just like a foreign environment to us. By next month, we'll be good. All right, so just as a quick reminder, some of our virtual norms is keep your camera on at all times, mute your microphone just so we don't pick up background noise. I will be guilty of that because I'm home and I've got a dog barking in the background, so I'll keep myself muted. Be present and engaged, ask questions, and let's stick to the topic agenda. Tina, with that, take it away.
Excellent, great. So the purpose of our curriculum subcommittee meeting is to collaborate between the Board of Education stakeholders and a variety of school-based leadership members, some of whom are here today. And we always are focusing our agenda topics on curriculum, instruction, school culture, and climate within the Weston Public Schools. So we're going to dive right in because we have Mercedes Fernandez and Janice Uxan from the high school, and Mercedes is our curriculum and instruction leader from World Language, who is also joining our Latin teacher, Janice, from the high school. We had a slight update from last year's excuse me, not last year, actually it was last year, last month's presentation around the program of studies. So this, in the future, this would have been part of the World Language section of the updates to the program of study. So we wanted to make sure before it goes to final print, we present you with one minor change to next year's program of study regarding Latin. So Mercedes and Janice, would you like to give us an update around the Latin 3 honors course update that the members of the board all have the we attached for you as a reference the new course proposal form as well as the syllabus to give you some background and context that Janice and Mercedes are going to speak to on this topic. So I'll hand it over to you both.
Good morning, everyone. So Janice, my colleague, will be speaking more in detail about the course that we are proposing, the ECE, Early College Experience, via UConn. And so I'll pass it on to you, Janice, to speak specifically about the course.
Okay, so I'm Janice Utsong, and I teach Latin with Amanda Telford at the high school. And I've taught this course before at Ridgefield, and it is an addition to 3 honors. So students who take Latin 3 honors, they will get 3 honors. Nothing's changing about that according to the school course description. We're adding on classical mythology from UConn. And I'm not 100% what the fee is. I think it's around $180 or $200, and they get 3 college credits in world language from UConn, which would apply to UConn or to, I think they say they accept up like 320 other colleges, at least in the United States, but certainly all of the state of Connecticut. And what would be added would be a more deep dive into classical mythology, especially Odysseus, or Ulysses, as he's known in the Latin world, and Ovid's Metamorphoses, his transformation, and poetry, both of which they read selections from in Latin 3. And how it would work is they would have asynchronous work outside of class. So in class, no one taking ECE is going to be different than anyone who is taking just the regular Latin 3 honors. So no splitting of the sections is needed. They are just taking on some extra work in the evening, mostly in 4-week blocks. So it's in modules for UConn. Every 2 weeks, they go into a different module. I've modified it to every 4 weeks. They go to their module so that it's over the course of the year. And they would have a quiz. They would write a 1 to 1.5 page paper in English, and they would have extra reading and videos. So that would be the work. And of course, obviously if they had questions, I would answer them in class. And they're probably during lunch. Every 8 days we have the lunch block, or every 4 days sometimes. I might take 20 minutes to assess with them. My dream is that like a lot of them would do it, because I think it's a really good option. But so that's pretty much, sorry for the bell. That's pretty much, any questions?
No, that's great, Janice. I just want to ask some clarifying questions, just so, because this is recorded and it is a public meeting as well, just so that people are truly understanding of how this works. Do we currently have Latin 3 honors offered at the high school right now?
Yes, yes.
Right. So this is this a new course that we're proposing?
No, this is an addition that students can take if they elect to.
Right, exactly. So just to be clear, the current Latin 3 honors course we already have in existence and we have enrollment for. This is basically an enhancement or maybe a co-seating option. So if students who are currently enrolled and have the prerequisite skills for Latin 3 honors, they now have this enhanced option to also receive early college experience credit through UConn if they choose to complete a certain number of assignments, modules, and additional educational experiences and earn college credit. Is that correct, Janice?
That
Did I
is
clarify
correct.
that? Okay.
Yes.
It's a really, and last time we presented the program of studies, we are starting to rethink and enhance some of our course curricula that have this very unique option where they can be co-seated so that students can get dual credit in some of the current course offerings that we already have. So this is another one of those examples as an extension to our program of studies presentation that we already did. So I just want to make sure, while we gave you a lot of detailed information, because that's what we expect our teachers and our curriculum instruction leaders to do, this is not an additional section. We already offer Latin 3 honors. This is truly an enhancement to the course offering that we already have.
I just want to say that I really appreciate the increased rigor in the classroom and differentiation for the different levels of students. But I do have a question. Are you going to be reaching out to the parents indicating what the increased time would be and what the opportunities are in offering the ECE course?
I'll start, and then maybe Janice, you can add, or Mercedes, you can add. Janice, you need to leave? I'm sorry. Oh, you're muted.
There's announcements, so for the next minute.
Okay, you could just, yeah. So, great question, Lisa. Yes, we always have a parent event with counseling and with the curriculum and instruction leaders to communicate any changes to the program of study and the course offerings. So that will be extended again as we move into course selection, the course selection process for next school year. What did you want to add anything, Mercedes? Because I know, like, as the CIL, you help coordinate that communication around changes to parents and the counseling department.
Yes, no, I will second what you said, Tina. We communicate closely with the counseling department, and we also speak to the students that we currently have or our colleagues. And we also, during PACT on Wednesdays, when we discuss the program of studies, we also explain to the students what the options are for them and what is required of them as regards coursework.
Perfect. And just
thank you for your question. It's really important.
Yes, and just to elaborate a little bit on what Mercedes mentioned, Wednesdays at the high school, they have PACT, which is their advisory time that the whole school is involved in. And that's one of the lessons that the counseling department does. I wouldn't say lessons, counseling, CILs, teachers, they carve out the time during PACT, the advisory time, to go through some of those changes and talk about course offerings and such. So because at the high school, as you know, Lisa, you know, a lot of this is driven by student accountability and interest, and we really want them to take ownership on the choices that they're making when it comes to course selection, especially as they get older. And for the students that are going to be, a lot of them are juniors and seniors, right, Janice, you would probably say in this level. You know, they're young adults and they should be able to be the first hand at making some of those decisions. So great. Thank you for those questions. David, do you have any questions? I just want to make sure
Yeah.
before they go back to midterms. They have
Yeah, so
midterm
just real
review right
quick,
now.
kind of, yeah, piggybacking on Lisa's question and what Janice was saying. So this is not a new section. This is the existing Latin 3 section. And the students who want to go for the college credit will have some additional coursework to complete. And then at the end of the semester, I presume, they are then eligible to get the additional level credit for doing the additional work.
Wait, am I now?
No, Janice, you need to unmute. Sorry.
Okay, good. I was muted. I was worried because there was like a lot of noise in the hallway. So yes, that's true, David. It's going to be they elect to take it, and then they're actually dual enrolled. They are a citizen. They're not a citizen. They're a student at UConn and a student at Weston. So UConn has a different grading system than we do, just a little bit. Like for instance, a 95 is an A, not an A plus, excuse me, up to a 100. And they'll get an ID. They have access to JSTOR and the library. So they have a lot of tools they could use for other classes, not just for Latin 3 honors. And then they'll get 2 transcripts. They'll have our transcript, which has their grade for Latin 3 honors / ECE. And then they will have a very small UConn transcript that they can send along when they apply to college, or if they're already in, they can see if they can get credit or get a course waived, which is equally important, as my daughter has found out this year. Being able to be ahead is nice.
So if the single student is, if that student is sitting in the same classroom as another student, and one has opted to go through the UConn course, so to speak, right there, essentially it's 2 different classes. They happen to be happening in the same classroom.
No, they're
okay.
taking Latin 3 honors and doing all the Latin work that comes along with it in class, and they've elected to, outside of class, participate with me, I'm still the teacher, with asynchronous discussions, with what they commit to watching videos of actually Dr. Roger Travis, who's the instructor at UConn, and writing up every 4 weeks, they take a quiz and they do a report. So they're doing reading in English. And so they're not doing more Latin, but they're doing reading in English and writing in English, and watching videos and doing discussion about their various topics that we're talking about. So they would have probably on average an hour more a week, and every 72 hours they have a lot of choice. So if they're in sports or whatever, some of it can be, it's up to them. If they want to do it in the morning, they want to do it in the evening or afternoon. It's all asynchronous in that sense. And like I said, I'll probably touch base for 20 minutes every week. So that 20 minutes, I think the other kids, I would do 2 different lunches like Amanda does sometimes with her AP and Latin 4. So the other kids wouldn't even know, basically. They would know they had the option, but they won't see a difference in class if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense to me now. Okay.
And since we're in the budget time frame conversation as well, I just want to make sure that we allowed for this kind of addition change for next year outside of when we typically make our full presentation, because Janice is already trained. We don't have to have any additional cost for training for this particular course. And we have the materials needed already for Latin 3 honors, and any videos are already provided by UConn. And we've already allocated, I believe, a couple $100 to update some Latin resources, but that's to support, I think, all Latin courses as well, which includes Latin 3 honors as well, right, Janice and Mercedes, for next year's budget. So that was already included, so we don't really need an extra amount of money.
Yes, that is correct. I was just going to mention that it has no impact on the budget, as the videos are provided by UConn, and we already have all the resources for Latin 3 honors.
And
And-
Janice is trained, right? So we
Yes.
don't, usually that's sometimes the largest bucket of money. As we started the conversation yesterday on the curriculum and instruction side, I allocate for any additional summer training that is needed for AP or ECE coursework that our teachers need to have in order to provide courses like this in the following school year. But in this case, Janice luckily is already trained. So thank you, Janice.
Yeah, so Janice is not only trained, but also recertified, correct, Janice?
Oh,
As
yeah.
She had her certification revalidated recently since she had been teaching in her previous district.
Yeah, December 5th, like they didn't even take 24 hours to think about it before approving it. And then the other thing is the professor, Dr. Roger Travis, believes in open source. So anything he's providing is also free. It would be free to his students as well.
I love that professor. The joke. Okay, great. So thank you both for joining. I know we're right in the middle of midterm review, and so we want you to be able to get back to class so that your students have you and you can move forward with that. So thank you both so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you for having us. Bye.
All right. So the other curriculum update that we wanted to spend a short brief time on, as I mentioned in the Summer Curriculum Academy has a couple new focus areas for curriculum design, review, and revision. One is social studies. This past school year, they released the final social studies K-12 standards. And we, since then, and I think I mentioned this in one of our previous month's agenda, we have designed and organized a K-12 district social studies committee. We are partnering with a member of the state of Connecticut. I'm sorry, I paused there because computer science was on my mind there for a minute, and I almost said Susan Auchincloss, but she's our computer science partner. But we were able to partner with a member from the state of Connecticut who actually wrote a grant for all districts to have her partner with school districts to support with the transition to the new standards. Her name is Jenny Diaz. She has met with us and our district committee, and we've already started that crosswalking conversation regarding our current units of study regarding social studies and how they connect to the updated standards and what are some of those units of study that we currently have in our K-12 continuum. And Andrea Noble, which is one of our curriculum and instruction leaders, she supports not only social studies, but also English language arts. So you've seen her. Lisa, I don't know if you've met her yet.
No,
but
nice to meet you.
I know David, he's been around for a little longer and knows Andrea very well. Shauna Johnson is our curriculum and instruction leader for secondary social studies 6 through 12. She's teaching a class right now, so she cannot attend. And like I said, she's in midterm, so she couldn't break away. And Alex Bluestein, who is our 3-5 curriculum and instruction leader at WIS, also does oversees and supports social studies and English language arts as well. So it's always nice to have the voice from the field coming and speaking about their experience with some of this work and not just always me or the principals, although we all love to hear the principals, we know that. But so I asked for Andrea to come and speak to that kickoff meeting that we had with our district committee and give some color and flavor for what that work looked like and give the subcommittee an update. So thank you for coming, Andrea.
Happy to be here. So to build off of what Tina was just talking about, we have been working on analyzing the updated state social studies frameworks. And within that process, we've also been reviewing the vertical progressions of the social studies standards. And that's really critical because we want to make sure that we're building the foundation K-5 that leads to 6-12 learning in social studies. So we're in the process of starting that work, which is really great for us to be able to do. Additionally, we're analyzing our current social studies units of study alongside the new standards in order to have conversations about whether or not there are going to be shifts within what we're doing, as well as any additional curriculum development that we're going to be needing to do. So in June at the elementary level, we're going to be working on curriculum writing and development in kindergarten through second grade, as well as fifth grade, just due to the fact that the intermediate school has a couple of other initiatives going on in third and fourth grade next year. That is going to necessitate a rollout process. And then I'm not quite sure what the rollout is 6-12 for next year. I'm sure that Tina and Shauna will be able to update you on those areas.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. So we're gonna have another district committee meeting to continue the work in February, most likely, as long as Jenny can confirm the date. But we've already started, just full disclosure, we've already started redesigning our high school courses, specifically in 9th and 10th grade, and the curricula is already being implemented at those two courses because the teachers and the curriculum and instruction leader felt that they had enough information and the least a number of changes to some of that curriculum and the standards over the last summer. So they've already started implementing world studies at the 9th and 10th grade level. We want to look at US history at the high school level and start figuring out how to scaffold the grade levels backwards. Because we talked a little bit about this at our budget meeting, and I think Michael Guido brought this up a little bit regarding how do we make decisions around scaffolding curriculum design and implementation. Because remember, it's one thing to write it, it's another thing to implement it and make sure we have enough professional development and support for our teachers to feel confident to implement it. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this, Andrea, but this came up during our kickoff meeting with our teachers as well, right?
Yeah, we were talking a lot at those meetings as to, what do we need foundationally, what builds forward, but also what builds backwards, right? So where are we in high school and what are some of the content that we build to, and how do we intentionally and purposefully scaffold backwards in order to make sure that our kids have the adequate foundation in social studies content, as well as the ability to research and analyze and critique in order for them to be prepared to perform at those high school levels.
So what we think we're going to do, while it's not finalized, we're going to continue revising this summer with our high school courses, US history being one of them. And what the district team felt was appropriate was that we would start writing 8th grade and 5th grade curriculum over the summer for the first year of implementation. And because remember in 5th grade, Lisa, I'm not sure if you know this, but in 5th grade, it's the first year that we start departmentalizing content areas. So 5th grade teachers at WIS only teach, actually they teach math, science, and then 5th grade also teaches ELA. So all of them actually teach social studies, don't they? Now that I think about it. Yeah. Okay. So that's not a good rationale now that I'm just thinking about it, because remember, they're going to be in their second year of implementation of literacy. Right. And so that would be 2. Yeah. And right. And so that we're always very mindful of the fact that, in the overload that we're putting on teachers when we adopt and implement new curriculum all at the same time. I've been in districts where we've done that, and it's really not been as effective because everyone is pulling for time to support teachers to make sure that they have what they need. And frankly, it's a lot on the teachers to have to learn and plan and start from scratch. It's almost like you're a new teacher sometimes when you're implementing new curriculum, right? So anyway, go ahead, Lisa.
No, I was just, so what's the planning for making sure that there's an implementation? Are you going to do grade-wide finals to assess how effective each unit has been implemented, or how do you look at data to assess what the issues are and what the successes are?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a lot easier in our math and ELA areas because we have a lot of curriculum-based and nationally normed assessments that we use very frequently. I will tell you that the state has built common assessments that are aligned to the standards. They're called IABs in Connecticut. And so we've been using those for ELA and math a lot more. They also have them in science, and they also have them in social studies. I would assume that they're going to have to update some of those as well. Sometimes, the state adopts new standards and then a lot of their resources are not updated, like they're behind. But in that area, that's one way that we measure and benchmark students against those standards in the units. Also, I would say that there are components of our literacy assessments through, and Andrea, you would know this probably more specifically, through our literacy assessments that do overlap with some social studies standards. So when we assess on literacy, sometimes it does give us information that helps us in other content areas. Literacy also helps us with science conversations as well. So, we don't want to test just to test. We're very mindful of the time that assessments impact instruction. So we want to make sure that the assessments we administer, if they are standardized, that they are giving us information that is going to help us to answer the question that you're asking, right?
Assessments are really important. But when you have, and I'm not sure, when you have 5 teachers teaching one subject area, if they all give the same final, it indicates which students learned it best, what teachers can be missing, how to support both instruction and students. And I was just wondering, where the IABs might be a way to do it. I mean, it's just making sure that students master the subjects, if that's being done in the schools.
Yeah, we're very fortunate because we have time that is built into everybody's schedules throughout the district for them to common planning time. And that's where they look at the curriculum-based assessments, right? Sometimes they're short assessments at the end of a lesson or in the middle of a unit or at the end of a unit, right? Because if we think of midterms and finals, that's almost like, I hate to say it like this, but like post-mortem, right? It's like at the end, right? I think a lot of the most impactful changes to instruction and meeting needs of kids is throughout a unit, right? Those little dipsticks that we want to gather data on to make adjustments on. So yes, you're right. Midterms, finals, end of unit projects are very important. They give us a lot of information to help us ensure by the end of the year, students are mastering standards. But I also just don't want us to forget that a lot of the small curriculum-based ones that we design during the unit are in many cases more impactful when the teachers are meeting together and analyzing those throughout the year, right? I think, Andrea, you are an expert in that.
Yeah, and I wanted to piggyback a little off of something that Tina just mentioned. With our new ELA curriculum, we are being very purposeful and intentional to look for parallels between social studies content and the American Reading Company's units of study. So we really are wanting to make sure that anywhere we can integrate our units of study, we are going to be doing that in order to make learning a lot more cohesive for students, but also to save us, quite honestly, some instructional time. Because instructional time in the areas of social studies is often an area that gets stretched the most at the K-5 level.
Good point. Great. So we just want to give you an update. We'll keep updating you as a lot of our curriculum work and the district committees are evolving. Computer science, as I keep mentioning, is another district committee that we're working on to create our articulated pathway and our plan. So thank you, Andrea, for coming. I really appreciate you giving us the time today.
I just want to add one thing, David, tomorrow, CABE is offering a webinar on the new social studies curriculum. I'm going to try and attend it. I'll
That's great.
give a brief synopsis next time.
Wonderful. Great. So thanks, Andrew. You're welcome to stay, but I know there's a lot going on in the schools. So I'm going to move on. Our next, our big agenda topic or item today, really, that's probably going to lead us to the 10:30 mark, is the Panorama family survey data results. We held off presenting this last time because we ran over on time. So I appreciate that. We're going to have principals kind of coming in and going throughout this last 30 minutes because there's some items happening out in the school. So we just wanted to be mindful of their time. So help me out. What do you see here? Do you see the panorama?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Yep. Like riding a bike, David, right? All right, great.
All
So
coming back to us now.
it's all coming back to us, right? Exactly. Oh, I didn't update the date. So yes, it was supposed to be on December 4th, but we are January 8th, 2025 today. So as I mentioned, the Panorama surveys this year are new to the district. We are providing these surveys to teachers and staff members, to students in grades 3 on up, and to family members. And so today's focus, because there's a lot of granularity in all of these surveys, is only on the community or family survey results. And thank you, Laura and Patty. You can chime in at any point for being here. At the end, we want to talk more specifically about how does data help us inform our actions? And so that's really where a lot of this, where the rubber meets the road, is important to some of the information that we're going to talk about today. Okay, so this is a blurred visual, but I wanted to make sure that you see the connection to the Panorama surveys to our district improvement plan. We are really trying to leverage these survey tools to help us at the building level with teachers and students, and leverage and analyze how this information can translate into action steps and see some changes to the data by the end of the year. We are administering in the fall, which we just completed, and then we're administering again in the spring. So 3 big overarching aspects today. We want to give you a overview of why did we use the Panorama survey and what does it measure? We want to talk about the data for the community and how that impacts and helps our schools with areas of strength and areas of focus. And then, like I said, we want to really focus in on what does this data tell us? What are the next steps for the data? All right, so let's start with the purpose and overview. So here's what we've gathered. This is a family/community survey. We received 461 responses from the community. We did change the way that we implement the survey. We have a window now, so it's about a month long. It's a couple weeks, right? And our principals communicate to our families with the links through newsletters. Tracy Edwards sends a mass email out as well. We've included it in the district newsletters as well. And so the survey is provided to all 4 buildings, right? Because we have families at all 4 levels. And when we design the survey, we have some flexibility, not a lot of flexibility, but we have some flexibility on the topics that we choose when we build the survey. So there's 5 topics that we started this year that we are gonna zoom in on. One thing I want to mention, that I think, David, you asked this at one point, but I can't remember, it was you or Lisa, around the statistical, reliability around surveys and what percentage is a good number, to say that, you know, this is a valid and reliable, survey that is collected, and the information that we've gathered from these 461 responses, we can say are a good predictors of the general population, and we can make some action steps around them. So what we know from research is that, and if you Google this, you might get different views, but Panorama specifically says if you get anywhere between 20 and 25% of your population, that is a valid response rate to begin to gauge, some, you know, your current state, and also make some action steps around. We are at 21% based on the community responses and the number of families we have, throughout the district. I hope that as we continue to use these surveys, people will start to see like, oh, we're going to do another survey in the spring. When I see that link, I really should spend a little bit of time to complete the survey. Typically, these surveys take about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. Okay.
Yeah, just real
So
quick.
yep, go ahead, David.
I'm following through on the board book version, which appears different, and it might be me, than what we're seeing on your screen. So should I'll look
I'm
at,
not sure. June, I
Okay.
don't know what is attached on there right now. I apologize. It should be this one.
okay, just June, if you want to make a note of that afterwards, I think what might be on board. So I'll watch your screen, Tina.
That would be
instead of-
great.
Okay,
Okay. So the five, the areas that we decided to measure in the survey focus on barriers to engagement, which talks about the factors that create challenges for families in order for them to interact with schools. So one of those survey takers responding to the question might be, how big of a problem is it for you to get involved in your current child's school, right? We'll go through different questions within each of these domains, but that was one of the topics we felt was important to ask about. We want to talk about school safety. I think that's self-explanatory. It includes questions about students' perceptions of their physical and psychological safety in their school climate, perceptions of the overall social and learning climate of the school, learning behaviors. So these are questions regarding the family's perceptions of their child's learning related behaviors. And then finally, engagement, right? To what degree do our families get involved and interact with their child's school? Okay. So before we go into the weeds a little bit, I want to make sure we are all on the same page with how these surveys are structured, the questions, the design of the questions as well. And since this is a recorded in public meeting, I felt like it was really important that we could get some of this messaging even out to families, so they really understand the why the survey was designed in the way it is, right? They have a lot of psychometricians on the back end that design these surveys with intentionality. And that's another reason why we shifted over to Panorama, because that's what they do. They use a lot of research on designing surveys to make sure that they're valid and reliable. So here's a question. Okay, so first, you'll see that questions are all framed as a question rather than a statement. So they're all questions. And they're all positively framed. Okay. And they're meant to be very conversational, with a middle anchor intentionally. And there was some feedback from our principals, from our teachers, from our family members, that this felt a little uncomfortable. Why is there this middle component of the responses? I feel like, you know, they didn't feel like they wanted there to be a middle. Well, there's a middle on purpose. It's, if you think of a number line, right? 0 is in the middle, positive numbers are to one side, negative numbers are to the right. If you're in the middle, you're neither positive nor negative, right? And having that option is a good, important piece of data for us. Because the goal is when we ask a question in any of these areas, we want to know, we want people to be confident to say, I'm either positive in this area or I'm negative in this area. And if they're neutral, that too is an aspect of our work that we need to do a better job to help them respond in a more positive or negative way. Questions on that? Because that can trouble people. I know that was a new learning for us this year. Okay, answer choices, reinforce central idea. And then finally, individual question parts of a larger topic or category. So everything is really anchored to ask specific questions and connected to the actual topic. One of those 5 topics that we talked about. Okay, any questions on the design of the questions? Okay, so next, in every survey that we built, there is an option for free responses. That's true for the kids, it's true for the teachers and staff, and it's true for the families. I will tell you that it is not a required question. Most of the other questions are. So of the free responses, only 3% of the 21% people started to, have an open dialogue or make a comment. So I want you to keep that in mind as we started looking for some patterns and trends based on our free responses, right? Because those, you have to actually look for common words. You have to look for some patterns and trends, but remember, it's only 3%. So statistically, we have to be mindful of the fact that that's not representative of the greater population of the data that we gathered with every other survey question.
Real quick, Tina,
Yeah,
the 3%, 127 people of the 461
mhm.
put comments in, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's actually, I'm gonna get in trouble for the math teachers here, but that's closer to 25%, right?
I'd have to do it again.
And I might be, and I don't mean, if I have 461 responses and 127 of those responses included someone typing in comments, yeah, it's a little bit over, it's about 27, 28%.
Yeah, I think what I was comparing actually was to the greater population of the number of families that we have. So when we think about like 461 is high enough for us to say there's patterns and trends around the 20 to 25% that we want to get. But if we say that 127 responses open-ended from the greater population of people in the district of all the families, that's a lot lower. So when we
Yeah.
think about like, that's the 3%.
Yeah, I'm thinking though, for what we're looking at, the right number to report on would be closer to 26 or 27%, because it's the percentage of the pool that actually replied.
Yeah, we could change that
Yeah.
versus the number of families that were
Right,
had an
because
option to respond.
yeah,
you're
because this
saying.
shows me greater engagement. So you have a very small subset, 461 people responded, but of the 461 that responded, 127 took the time to actually put in their own feedback. So they were,
Yeah.
in my mind, they're fairly 26 or 27%, what I call heavily invested, right? When you take the time to actually free thought or free type or whatever you want, free response. So I think it's a low percentage of overall, but it's a high
Yeah.
percentage of those. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll edit that and
Yeah.
make a note for sure. Thank you. Okay, so now that you have an understanding of like how the survey is designed, let's start diving into the data a little bit. Before we do, I just want to make sure that we know that when we look at data, there's a lot to look at, right? And when we are analyzing our data, everyone looks at it differently, right? So if I asked you to look at this picture and say, what do you see? When you think about that question, when you're looking at a picture like this, all of us on this call are probably going to give us different conclusions, different perspectives, and we're gonna zoom in different areas. So I know that you're all gonna look at the data maybe differently than I did, or you're going to maybe zoom in on a question that I didn't zoom in on, so we can always come back to this. And I will charge Patty and Laura to chime in at any point, because they have been knee deep in this too. So we are trying to use the ladder of inference when we are making perceptions and drawing conclusions from the data. You know, there's a lot of research around this ladder of inference, and we've been doing this with our staff and our administrative team around what it really means to build upon our inferences when we're looking at data, right? We want to start with low inference. What are the facts? What does the data tell us? Don't make assumptions yet. Don't try to solve the problem, right? Very factual, low level. And then we have to move up that ladder and start asking ourselves some reflective questions and really think about our current practices before we start designing our action steps, which are higher on that ladder of inference. I know I threw that in there, Lisa, because I'm sure you're very familiar with the ladder of inference and can add and chime in and even include some of your experiences on that work as well. All right, so let's dive in. So what Panorama provides to us is the number of surveys that the families responded at each school. You can see that there were 118 responses from Hurlbut, 108 from the high school, 129 from the intermediate school, and 106 from the middle school. If you create the number of percentages from each, it ranges from 26% at Hurlbut, 23 at the high school, 28 at the intermediate school, and 23 at the middle school. So one of your wonderings might be, you know, was one school more heavily was there a higher response rate from one school that maybe skewed the overall results more than other? The answer is no. There was a very similar and common response rate across all 4 schools.
And Tina, sorry to interrupt again, but
okay.
I assume at some point you're going to present this probably to the Board of Ed and to the community. If you can add that column,
Yeah,
because I know we're going to ask the percentage question.
I know, I anticipated it, right?
Yes.
I will add that in. So a lot of these are screenshots from the actual back end of the survey. So, you know, trying not to overload us and show how we use the survey platform for you was kind of my goal. But yes, I can add like a text box in and an overlap. Thank you for that feedback. All right. Also, so, yep, Lisa, were you going to say something? You're muted.
Are you going to talk about an action plan about how to increase the amount of participation for the fall?
You're always a step ahead, Lisa, aren't you? Yes. So that'll be in the next step slide at the very end. I wanted to go a little slower and make sure people understood the survey and the data and kind of process as we were going along. But yeah, that's we are regularly talking about that, and that's why the principals will help me with some of that as well. But we need your help on the family part for sure. So, you know, doing some of these presentations like this, I believe is also a way to kind of, you know, expose and communicate with families around why we need the survey and why it's helpful to us and why we're leaning on them to really take the 10 to 15 minutes when the link goes out. If they could please carve some time out within that window, which is an expanded window than we've done in the past, right? Patty and Laura, it's more like a month time frame. Usually it was, I think when I first got here, the internal ones were a week or two. Now we've really tried to create more of a larger window to complete the surveys. Can't remember exactly, but they would know better than me. It was about the same. I'm reading your lips, Patty. Okay.
Sorry, it was about 3 weeks. We extended it a little bit. So
Okay, so now we're in 4 weeks. Yeah. All right, so what this survey also does for us is it breaks down the overall survey into the 5 categories. It gives us the percentage of favorable responses in each of the areas. And I want you to visualize that survey question, the design of the survey question. Remember when I gave you the context of saying, think of it as a number line. 0 is in the middle, positive numbers to the left, negative numbers to the right. If you're in the middle, the survey shows that response as neither positive nor negative. So if you're looking at this column for blue and you're looking at favorable numbers, where are you within that question on the middle? You're not in the favorable area. So this is what I was talking about, where our administrators, our teachers, like, we're not used to doing that. In the past, with our previous surveys, we would include the middle score. But the way that this survey is designed, if you're in the middle and you're at a 0 level, you don't have an opinion either way, that is not considered favorable. So it's important that I pause there, because when families and when teachers and when students are responding, they need to be mindful of that when they're answering and submitting their response. Okay? Then those percentages are compared nationally across all the millions of data points that Panorama uses. Most districts use this Panorama survey across the country. I will tell you that under the hood, you also get to change the national percentile. You can change it to a district percentile on some of these surveys to compare to ourselves as well. But for what we're doing this year, we're keeping the comparisons to national percentiles and rankings. I can tell you most of the percentiles, if you hit the 40th percentile, so see the last column, if you're 39th percentile or below, you're gonna see like a red shaded area, like almost like a scaffolded response rate. When you hit 40th and above, that's when things start to get stronger with your response rates. Okay? Questions on this? All right, so let's break it down. So what I gave you in the presentation was, I went into all 5 of the topics, and I expanded the questions that they ask within the topic. So remember, this topic is on the barriers to engagement. And what does that mean? I'm just going back to a few slides. I'll give you the description. These are the factors that can create challenges for families to interact with or become involved with their child's school. Survey takers responded to the question, for example, like the first question at the top, how big of a problem is the following issue for becoming involved in your child's current school, such as childcare needs? Okay, I couldn't put every single question in here, so I picked one on each one of these domains. What you can do, or what we can do on under the hood, is we can expand each individual question and look at how the responses presented itself within that Likert scale, right? The Likert scale is always an odd number. So most questions have 5 options. There are a few questions that have 7. Okay, I think I picked one of them that had the 7 options. So just as a reminder, the favorable response rate would be the bottom 2, right? If you look to the right of my screen, I showed you that gradients of color. We always want to be in the green, right? It's that area of positivity towards the response rate. So that's one area that we know we've got some less than favorable responses for families to engage in their current school because their schedules are so busy. Now, there are some questions in here, I'm gonna say, and maybe Laura and Patty, you can chime in, like there are some things that are out of our control, right? However, one thing that may help us, and maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, that we keep talking about very frequently, even before we did this survey, is and I think Lisa and David, you probably, I know you're all talking about this too, because we talk about the timing of meetings, whether it's a PTO meeting, whether it's a board meeting, whether it's an event that we host at school, right? If we know that there's so many people that are busy because of their schedules. Maybe we have a follow-up survey that says to them, would you prefer all PTO meetings to be virtual? And would you prefer them all to be at night? Right? Would you prefer them to be recorded so that when you drive into work, you can listen to the recording? Would that be helpful? Right? So that might be an action step that from that 31%, we want to shift so that we have a higher favorable response rate when it comes to barriers. Anything you want to add here? Those are the kinds of things we talk about when we think about that ladder of inference. Like, here's a very low inference factual piece of information. Now, as we move up the ladder, what might we do to respond to that number in some way that is in our control? Okay. Here are more questions from the barriers of engagement. One of them that I highlighted in here was, how big of a problem is the following issue for becoming involved in your school, your child's school? The school provides little information about involvement opportunities. So we probably need to unpack that a little bit further. I think we've had discussions around like, well, let's list out what are some of the opportunities where parents can get more involved in their child's school, right? Maybe we start with, we each have school climate committees, right, at the school level. Let's bring that question back to the school climate committee and maybe start to list out some of the current ways that our parents can get involved in the school activities. And maybe they're just not aware of them. Maybe we need to do a better job of communicating what currently exists and how they can get involved. And then again, how does that correlate to their busy schedule? Right? So now we start to overlap questions together and start really, again, working up that ladder of inference to make some adjustments or changes to our current practice in that area. Okay, school safety, next topic. And we can go back if we need to. Next topic, and my goodness, it's already 10:30. So the next topic is around school safety. I highlighted the fact that, you know, we have a really high favorability around kids feeling safe in the school, right? So that they don't feel they don't feel unsafe at all, right? So that's a good response rate. School climate is another topic that we used, and one of the focus areas that we want to unpack a little bit more here, and we want to look at that. This is that question that they had 7 responses for families, and we had a large number of people in the middle, right? 31% of responses were in the middle. So this is one of those questions where, how can we help teach families feel like they have a more positive response or a negative response, so we can really unpack that data a little clearer to truly see what they're why they're responding in that way to that question. How fair or unfair is the school system of evaluating children?
Tina,
So
real
that's
quick,
an interesting response.
I took
yeah.
the survey, and if I don't remember this question specifically, but as I read this question now, if it were presented to me as a parent, I, as an individual, don't have a strong feeling.
Yeah.
My 2 kids do well, they come home happy, I feel like they're getting good education, and therefore I would choose neither fair nor unfair. And so, but mine is a positive experience. And I feel like the biggest fallacy with this survey in general, there's a couple actually. The concept of responded favorably means nothing to most people. It's a very hard number to understand. But I think that the data can be very heavily skewed. And I don't know if there's a way to adjust for that or when we go to the community, because neither fair nor unfair, I believe, is a positive.
And this is the conversation that we keep coming back to. And what the response and what Panorama and the designers would say is that means you don't have a strong feeling either way when you respond. So if you just said to me, you have a positive experience, then you should be on the other end. Then that shouldn't have been your response, right?
Right.
And
but
so I think
yeah.
part of it is education.
Yeah.
I think part of it is understanding, to your point, David, even before, what does that question mean?
Right.
I think some of this is also about, like, when you're talking about evaluating, a parent's perspective of evaluating children, whatever level you're in, right? Because this is not by level that I am showing you. This is overall, right? I did give you the grades at the bottom, which look pretty, it's like a rectangular distribution. So it's kind of like consistent down there. What does that mean? Do we know what that means?
Right. I could tell you, again, for neither fair nor unfair, I fall in the category of no opinion. And therefore I would choose that neither fair nor unfair, but it has a net negative connotation in the survey.
It does. You're right.
right.
Because and now you know that. So
Right.
if you really are, if you're really saying, well, actually, I think it's fair. Like, I think they did well. I'm not like overly zealous about, like, you know, if you want to say evaluation is grades, but then I might say, then you're really telling me right now it's slightly fair.
Right. So I think the real takeaway is kind of a two-part takeaway, one of which you hit upon, which is if we're going to continue to use this type of survey, I think we have to do more on the communication side. I know somebody on that committee to get parents to understand the way the data is parsed, right? Because it's like prepping our kids for SATs, right? So I feel like if we're going to continue with this type of survey and we do it again in the spring, we have to be a lot more forward thinking and a lot more in front of letting parents know how things are scored. So if you are happy, don't, if you're on the fence, if you're not, really, in my opinion, if you're not negative, pick at least one step above.
Right. That's what I'm saying to you, right?
Avoid the
Slightly
middle.
fair.
Right. And conversely, though, I would ask the question, why, and this might not be a question that you get an answer for now because it might be too deep of a question, but why are we using Panorama if we're struggling and having to interpret data that we believe to likely not be the middle of the road? It's giving us we likely give, from my perspective as a parent, it's giving us false negative.
Yeah, and I would say that number one, they are when it comes to survey design, you can get yourself in trouble when you design surveys that don't have the research behind the way you design the survey questions, right? And when you talk about valid response rates, that's 100% of surveys, is making sure that you design questions that are unbiased, that they don't sway people. But to your point, there's a lot of education that goes around in this, and making sure that when you're looking at comparisons, there's enough data points to use when you're looking at comparisons, right? So that's a part of it. We here, most districts are required, when you think of school climate, you're supposed to have a statistically valid tool. You're not supposed to be making up your own. Okay. The state of Connecticut tried to create a bank of questions for districts to use when because we were required to present or gather a school climate survey. They were less than par. And so that's when people started looking at actual companies that do this for a living. And Panorama is like the Cadillac of climate surveys on the market. So to your point, this is our benchmark. We've never used it before, never knew what our response rates were going to look or sound like. We're here now. We're gonna take this for what it's worth and start to see if some of the education pieces that you're talking about and communication with faculty, with parents, and with students throughout the year will help us unpack some of the conversations. I will say that I think the richness of surveys is the dialogue that we're having right now, right? Data is one snapshot, but where the rubber meets the road is in these conversations about what that number is saying. Right? I think that's the most impactful piece. And then we give it again in the spring and we see if those conversations, if those action steps, if any of the practices we've intentionally made an adjustment to has made an impact. We're not going to look at, our principals aren't going to take each individual question here that they have. They're going to zoom in on one spot and they're going to say, this is really where I feel like is going to leverage our work the most. And here are the action steps that we're going to focus on.
I'm wondering if there's a way with the raw data to adjust for or run two scenarios where you took that middle of the road answer that has a net negative impact. And you said, if you took the 31%, for example, of this question, and you broke it in half, so, 15.5%, and you took 15.5% of the responses and put them in the unfair, and 15.5, you put them in the fair.
Yeah, how would that change?
Right, because,
Yeah.
but I think ultimately it comes down to educating the community on how these surveys parse the data so that when if you don't have an unfavorable view of, for example, the evaluation of your child, but you don't have a strong feeling that pick at least the one step, pick something in the positive category. Don't go neutral.
Yeah, and I think that's why I put the ladder of inference in this slide. And I know I spent maybe a little bit too much time on the research, but that's what data can do, right? People can start to create their own rationale as to what the data is telling us and why, and start to parse things out. And what if this, what if that? That really isn't where we put our energy. The energy should be at the low inference level. This is what it tells us. It's very factual. Start transitioning that information to what practice we currently do and start making some action steps to see the next time we give it, whether or not it's going to make a difference. Because in the end, all of our action steps are for the betterment of the district and the community and the students and the staff. And so that's really where I hope we start to put our energy around, and I know our principals are. So I'm going to keep moving forward. I don't mean to cut you off. But this always happens when we look at survey data, right? So learning behaviors is another one. There was a few here that we know we want to unpack at the school level with our principals. Remember, this is a parent perception. This whole area around learning behaviors, it's the parent perception of their children. So the parent perceives that their children read favorably for fun 45% of the time, right? I don't know, maybe that's right or wrong. We might unpack that by grade level a little bit more. Is it more at the lower grades versus the upper grades? And then maybe it's a conversation if we really want to focus on the love of reading and fun related to reading as kids move up the grades, then maybe we start looking at book clubs and we look at the kind of textbooks we're offering and what do our libraries look like for choice for kids. Maybe we survey the kids and say, why don't you love to read? Is it because of the time that you have to read? Or is it because of access? Or is it because, you're too bogged down with the books in the classroom and you don't really get to pleasure read very often? So I highlighted that one. That's always interesting to me. Another one I put in here was about working on school activities at home. How easily is your child distracted? That was kind of an interesting question to me from a parent perspective, to see like how intently our kids are able to really, engage in the work and the activities that they receive when they're home. So just again, parent perception when they're not in school, because a lot of these were very similar responses as far as response rates, favorability. So you can unpack a lot of these in here. All right, engagement. So one that obviously really stuck out to me, and I think Laura and Patty, we talked a lot about this, was engagement, family engagement. And this topic, just to give you the degree to which families become involved with and interact with their child's school. So overlapped a little bit with the barriers, I think, right? I talk about that ladder of inference, but on a low level, we had 3% favorable response rate. Now, if you look at the choices, okay, David, to your point, understanding the question, understanding the options, this is something that the principals are really looking at a little bit further. And you know what, to your point, David, maybe this question, we don't weight it very much, right? We put our time and energy in a different question, because the reality is, once or twice per year of how often do you meet in person with teachers at your school, at your child's school? Well, the reality is we have conferences, right? The reality is, if there's not a problem, are we talking about phone calls? No, because if we talk to the teacher, that is different than meeting in person, because of the way the question is designed. Because the
Yep,
question
yeah.
says meet in person,
Yeah. No,
right? So
absolutely.
I'm not ignorant to the fact that, okay, this might be a really good question, because maybe we want to make sure that there's face-to-face contact. But do we then say, hey, if you meet virtually on a Zoom with a parent and it's face-to-face, that too is considered in person?
Yeah, and to the point is that I don't feel any need to meet with either of my child's teachers any more often, and especially at the lower grade level, than twice a year, or whenever, again, my kids are happy, they're getting good education, and quite
Mhm.
honestly, if I need to reach out to one of my teachers, I send them an email, or my wife does, and we get a response. So
Yeah,
it's
right.
so arguably this is a net positive, but it is viewed as a net negative. Um,
Because of the way the question is written. Again, I do think that there's merit in in-person meetings, for sure. I know Lisa's gonna jump in here. But because this number was so low, I wanted to make sure we unpacked it and you saw the why.
So,
Can
I
I,
mean, maybe feedback for the survey is, it's not how often do you meet in person? Do you have do you have multiple opportunities to
Mm-hmm,
meet with teachers, right?
mm-hmm,
Because you're looking at two different things here. You're looking at whose responsibility is. If the school is offering multiple opportunities, multiple experiences, to meet with you, but the parents don't or can't or don't feel the need to,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
well, it's not that the school needs to change. It's there are
mm-hmm.
things that go on in everyone's lives.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So, maybe it's feedback for maybe this is the best survey that you can get, but they need to implement different questions for the Weston School District. And for us, there are for some school districts who don't offer multiple opportunities. And so it's can you? But for a lot of these questions, it's do they offer
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
versus how much have you done it?
Mm-hmm.
It's, or do
Agreed.
you have the ability to?
Yeah, and even though we had like this one, because the one aspect of, you can add questions into the panorama survey, right? There's an option to add in if you would like. However, if you choose this topic, family engagement, and you think it's important topic to ask, you do not get to change the questions that are bucketed in that topic.
Got it.
So if we take out this topic, we take out all these questions. And I guess to your point, Lisa, like, we could cut and paste and like write every single survey question and design them just how they had them in that topic, but eliminate that one if we wanted to do that. So for
Yeah.
this year, our goal was to just keep it status quo, try to have a pre and a post survey. And then over the summer, we can analyze that data again and make some decisions moving into next year, so that we could look at
Ye-
usability.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at in the past year, how often have you visited the child's school?
Yeah.
No, in the past year, how many times have you had the opportunity to?
Mhm, right. I'm with you. Yeah, I wrote it down. I wrote it down for sure. So, and maybe we can even do that now where we do like some mini follow-up surveys based on some of the data at the individual school level with families, you know. That could be even a charge of, you know, working with the PTOs around a specific topic and kind of unpacking it a little bit further. Because of this data response, we want to unpack that a little bit further so that we clarify, you know, better ways to be engaged, for example. All right, I'm going to move on because
Yeah.
we're getting at the end. So the other aspect is the free responses. So I wanted to show you under the hood what happens that Panorama provides you. It's a word cloud. If you've ever done any action research, and you're looking at survey results and verbally kind of looking for patterns and trends and analyzing people's responses, this was a nice feature for our responses throughout all the surveys. It does capture specific text based on what people responded. So I just want to make sure you recognize there is no way to change any of this. This was completely pulled as a screenshot out of a back end of the site. Obviously, people use the word Weston a lot when they responded. So obviously it's at the forefront. And it looks for repeated words in their responses. And remember, as you look at some of these words, the larger the words, the more frequently the back end of the platform counted the free responses. So Weston was used the most times when somebody responded. Also want to make sure that as you see some of these words popping up, you know, like that teacher alarm button. Okay, remember how we were talking about this? Remember, this was given in September and closed in the middle of October, right? So there's been a lot of work that has been done around our new director of security, around locks, around the individual teacher buttons that we have on our lanyards. So I just want you to be mindful of the timing with some of these patterns and trends. So then I decided, you know what, let me pull some quotes, okay? No names, you know, it's all anonymous, but I did want to pull out some interesting language from parents, right? So the alarm buttons was a big word on that word cloud. So then I went in and said, okay, let me go find one because you could sort it. So I would like the school to have more security technology features like teacher alarm buttons to alert police and auto lock doors. That was the comment from a parent. I would love more opportunities to meet other parents to build community. it would be helpful if we could have parent teacher conferences in middle school. Okay. Thank you for the care and effort you all put forward. Okay, that was a one I just threw on the screen. A second bus service for kids participating in after school programming on the campus would be helpful. So there was a lot more. I told you there's 120 something responses. I will tell you that the principals have already started unpacking these. I know that this is a very text dense slide, so I do apologize, but I'm always mindful of the fact that this is, attached on the website and people can have access to this in writing. So that's why I tried to be as explicit with some of our next steps as possible on this slide. The principals have shared all of these surveys with faculty. They are unpacking this data at faculty meetings. They're looking at not only the survey results, the percentages, but also the free responses as well. They're looking at the student results, they're looking at the teacher and staff results, and they're looking at the family results. So there is a lot going on to help us transition from some of those areas that we know we want to focus on. For example, communication and engagement. We kind of talked about this throughout the whole presentation. We agree, we're with you. The school principals and I were collaborating on thinking about that scheduling piece I mentioned before, talking about communication on the district website, making sure that people know how to access the link to the survey to kind of, to your point, Lisa, increase the number of responses to gather some more info when we do the spring survey. And then also, how do we communicate this information to families, right? Board members, families. This is the first time that I've done the presentation so far. And we can rinse and repeat and do it again and again and again. Happy to do that. What else? We know that there was school safety communications and measures. I put that up there because of that big teacher alarm button word that came out of the word cloud. I want to make sure that a lot has been done since this survey, right? I mean, we didn't wait for this survey to, put some of these action steps in place. We also wanted to talk about engaging students and parents on the impact of social media. We did that already. We had Max Stossel come. We're implementing the Yonder bags at the middle school. At the high school, we're talking about a day of considering a way for the day at the high school, which came out of Max Stossel's presentation. I don't know if you were able to watch it, where the whole school is committed to putting away their cell phones for the day, and disconnecting from the digital world to reconnect to the physical world. That's the whole idea, and conversations with each other. We're always looking at how some of this data helps to increase teacher knowledge and the use of our responsive classroom strategies and practices in the schools. And as I mentioned, about how we are using our school climate committees to help us think about ways to enhance our practices and share the information with families, and extend some of that learning, to home with families. Okay, so I'm at 10:56. I have 4 minutes. So any questions for Laura and Patty? Thank you guys for kind of hanging in there for a while. Megan was supposed to jump on. I think she got pulled, and same with
I've been
Dan,
here.
so I'm hard.
I've been here.
Oh, Megan, oh,
Yeah.
great. Thank you
Been here
so
for an
much.
hour.
Oh,
Yeah.
gosh, I didn't see you on the screen. I can't see everybody. I'm so sorry. Megan is here. Okay, so we have 4 minutes left. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer, but I really felt like we have spent a lot of time and energy around this survey, that it was important that we use this platform to unpack it, ask questions, make sure we're all on the same page with what this survey is. Megan, Patty, Laura, I'll give Lisa and David opportunities to ask you questions, and close out with the last 4 minutes we have with you guys.
I don't have any questions.
Oh,
Right. And the only thing I was gonna say was understanding, I've seen Megan here, I will vouch for her, I will be her alibi, she's been here the whole time. You're good,
Sorry.
Megan.
so sorry.
I'm wondering though, with, so much that we cover in curriculum, I'm wondering if some of this could be moved to communication. Because I feel like it might be, obviously whomever is here can come to those kind of meetings. I'm wondering if that's a better use of, I feel like there's so much that we cover in curriculum. If we should move this to communication, as a,
Yeah, I think a lot of it overlaps. I'd be happy to speak to Lisa and Dan. Who runs that? Is there a communication committee? You still do it? Okay.
So, and we can, Lisa can sit in on that. It's actually Chad,
Okay.
Sharon, and I. And I know
Okay.
Chad is super busy, so maybe Chad wants to depart that committee, and we open up a seat for Lisa, and then we, but yeah, I'm just thinking like, there's so much we cover in curriculum, and I think a lot of this has to do with like understanding the data. How do we communicate to the community? What does it mean, and how are we following up? I'm just wondering, I feel like we cover so much in curriculum that we sort of rush through maybe the real curriculum items to get to this, which is just as important. So we move this into communication, which is might be a better match. So I don't know if you want to talk to
Yeah,
Lisa
I mean,
about
I think
that.
there's a good argument for that. I do think that a lot of this relates to teaching and learning and school climate, which is part of the curriculum committee. But we can have an off,
Yeah.
a side conversation to see if like this specific topic is something for communication that we regularly present over there. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. All right, well, any
And I just,
other?
I would just add that the high school also engaged with the organization Challenge Success, which is out of Stanford University. So David, as a parent at the high school, you might have taken the Challenge Success survey as well. So what we're doing is we're looking at the data that we receive from Challenge Success. So to Tina's point, that away for the day idea with Max Stossel, you know, I sent out in my last week, I had a couple. We know that 84% of our kids sleep with their phones in their rooms at night. So it's like, we're trying to figure out how to tackle cell phones. Kara and the folks in the library right now are working on a phone daycare where kids can recognize like themselves and say, I really want to study for this test, or I have to prep for this project. So can you babysit my phone for a little bit? And we're really, what we really want to focus on is kids making good choices. And so maybe we're not like demanding that the whole school puts their phones away. I think even pre-COVID, there was some work here where kids could wear a sticker. Like, I've committed to having my phone away. So, you know, kind of keep me honest today, please. And so to work on those things. And just because we really want kids to really reflect on their own habits, knowing that in a few short years, they are going to have their phones in their dorm rooms or wherever they are. And so to help them form some really good habits. So we're putting all of this data with the school climate panorama survey, the Challenge Success survey, and seeing how those kind of interweave. And then those teams are really going to focus on some key elements that we can set some goals and some kind of impact items, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, to work on.
Thank you, Megan. That was our future meeting topic, so I'm glad that we ended with that because Megan and I just spoke this morning. The Challenge Success Survey, the coach that we partner with through Challenge Success is willing to come and do a presentation, right, Megan? Maybe that we can coordinate in our February meeting so that we could see that data also. It's fascinating. I saw the dashboard this morning. It's a totally not totally different, but I think the questions are really, really reflective
Can I say
questions.
it's more specific,
Yes.
related to like the problems and practices of high school. And I think it's to some degree a little bit more specifically actionable.
Absolutely. So we're at the 11:01 mark. This was a great meeting. I really appreciate you guys hanging in there and Megan jumping on for the hour. And all of your questions, Lisa and David, I think well taken. I wrote many notes as I always do when you guys give suggestions. So thank you for that. And next meeting topics, as I mentioned, we're hoping to have the Challenge Success data representative come and kind of walk us through that. And by then we should have a district computer science committee team update as well. All right.
And I will debrief on the CABE webinar
Great.
for the next one.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, especially Megan, who didn't get any love until the last couple of minutes. But no, thanks for everyone for staying late, and we will see you, I guess, at our Board of Ed meeting in a couple of weeks, and I can get a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, second. All right, thanks, everybody.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.